Alright, so today I want to talk a little bit about transportation and driving. But let's take it back. Let's take it back to the 1700s. So it was actually in the 1700s that automobile production began. But it really wasn't until the early 1900s that people were actually able to afford purchasing an automobile. So it's pretty, learning to drive and having a car is pretty essential in our culture, especially here in Idaho, where public transportation is very limited. Can you close the door too? Alright. So I have a nice picture here. It demonstrates what I was feeling when I first started driver's ed. Most of us, when we learn to drive, take driver's ed or a class. I was terrified. I had very little experience. In fact, my experience was a week before class started. I was in a parking lot with my mom, driving my brother's old beat-up car, and I think I was going 5 to 10 miles per hour. It overheated and died. So that was my experience. So in the car, when I first went onto the road, I had a very real awareness that I could actually get injured. I'm here with other drivers on the road. So I had a very intense focus, and I was aware of what was going on outside of the vehicle as well as inside the vehicle. And now, honestly, looking back, I can't say I've ever had that same focus again. Now, I'm not saying that you need to have that intensity like you did when you first learned to drive, but I do believe we brought too many distractions into the vehicles, causing a lot of accidents today. So I have a suggestion for us, so something that we can do. The first thing is to remove distractions. Get back to the basics and learn to stay safe. So first we need to know what are the distractions. And the distractions, there's many different things here. Some examples would be food, cell phones, talking, music. Lots of women do makeup in the car. Shaving for men. We need to get rid of those distractions. Distractions can be categorized into 3 different categories. So the first is manual, taking your hands off the wheel. Next we go on to visual, so taking your eyes off the road. And then cognitive, taking your mind off of the road. So where are your thoughts going? Some research has shown that distracted driving accidents come down to really 5 top distractions. And as we go through this list, I just want you to think about when you were driving today. Did you do any of these things while you were driving? So, did you go ahead and reach for your cell phone? Yeah, check. Reach for, maybe a toy. I had my son throw toys up at me before. So, think about that. And then next, with passengers in the vehicle, were you talking to them? Now that's not bad, to talk to someone, but were you looking at them? Were you taking your gaze off the road? What were you doing as you were interacting with the people in your car? Next, we go on to objects or events outside of the car. A lot of times an accident causes an accident, so someone will see an accident, be intrigued, and then rear-end the person in front of them because they're so interested in what's happening. Another example is on 17th Street. There's someone dressed up as a dog, and I keep wondering who it is and what they're doing there. But that's an example of an outside distraction. The second top distraction, I was surprised, is cell phones. I really thought that would be number 1, but it comes in at number 2. A few things that distract us with our phones, obviously texting, making phone calls, maybe checking your time, checking something. And then the top distraction is being lost in thought, or just mentally not focusing on the road. So once we learn how to remove the distractions, then we move on to getting back to the basics. And what does that really mean? So as we were talking about driver's ed at the beginning, that's really where you're focused on the basics of driving on the road. And I feel like that's what we need to get back to, is that simple focus. A few things we can do. Focus on the road. Think about where you're going. Your thoughts have a huge impact. If your thoughts are drifting, your car will probably start to drift as well. An interesting statistic is that of all distracted driving accidents, 62% are due to being lost in thought and result in a fatality. So it is very real and it is very serious. As far as cell phones go, I know sometimes it can be very hard to not check your phone. You hear it vibrating, you hear it go off, and you just feel like, it's an emergency, you need to answer it. Most likely, it probably is not an emergency. So the easiest thing to do is to just simply turn it off. Don't even have it on. That way you're not tempted to even look at it. Now, this was another interesting statistic that I found. In 46 states, texting is banned driving. And so what does that mean for you specifically? In Idaho, 42 states, including Idaho, have a texting ban, and it's a primary enforcement. So what that means is that you can get pulled over for texting and be fined. So you don't have to, they can pull you over if they see you texting. So that's just one reason why you should stop texting and driving. Other reasons, a big campaign came out recently, driving while intoxicated. Research again proved that you were 6 times more likely to get in an accident while texting and driving versus driving while intoxicated. Now, this is probably the most staggering statistic, and that's that among teenagers, 1 in 11 teenagers will die per day due to texting and driving. So it really is something that is impacting us and something that really a lot of us aren't stopping. So what do we need to do? We need to stay safe. And how can we stay safe? So the first thing we can do is to secure our pets and our children. I know that sounds kind of silly and ridiculous, but make sure they're in their car seats. Make sure your animals are set. Any loose objects, make sure they're in place. That way when you're driving, you don't have that distraction. Next, adjust the dials. Maybe a navigation like a GPS tool. Just set where you're going first instead of starting your trip and then setting your destination. Now focus. Again, we talk a lot about focus, and that's because that's the #1 distraction. Losing that mental focus. Have an idea of what's going on around you. That way, if a child or something were to jump in front of your car, you can do everything you can to stop. The last thing we can do is to end calls. So end a text, end a call, and go ahead and just again turn it off, put it away. And so we go back again to removing the distractions, getting back to the basics, and staying safe. Now we've gone over several statistics, and I encourage you not to become a statistic. I mean, none of us want to. And so how do we not become that statistic? You have to be that change. And you be the example. And as we become the examples, that will impact those around us. Thank you. All right.